Well, hello, wizards. It's Dev, aka the Heavenly Body from Mtg. Got Ziggy with me. Magic Talk, and it's time. Hope you're ready for the first deck tech at Kaldheim Standard, Jack. The patrons wanted to see Orzhov Angels, and so do you. So strap in. We'll see if this deck has wings.
And I'm your favorite magic channel's favorite magic channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck techs. I come correct like a porn star, slicing up all these other suckers with my sword mark.
You're an angel face, Ziggy. Yeah, you look how cute the fat little man is. Oh, hi. Hi. Sorry about that. I'm just over here loving my cat during the intro. Don't mind me. But anyway, Angels means a lot to a lot of different people because ever since the year of our Lord Richard Garfield, 1993, Angels has been one of the most popular tribes in all of the Gathering, but it seems like it's been a really long time since Wizards gave us a set that gave us a bunch of different Angels payoffs so we can actually play the stinking deck in Standard. But we finally got a whole set full of not just like one or two good Angels payoffs, but like a whole bunch of good Angels payoffs. But does it actually add up to a decent deck? Let's talk about that. Now, probably the most important thing when it comes to understanding this new Orzhov Angels archetype is liking and subscribing. If you don't do those things, you're just never going to get it. I'm sorry. But aside from that, another important exercise is just to identify what cards have been best for the deck in testing. And that's kind of how I'm going to order the deck tech today. I'm going to go through in order of all the cards that have kind of just done the best in testing. And with that in mind, I got to start with Orzhov's Retribution, my favorite card in the deck by kind of a lot. Now, first of all, I'm pretty sure that's right. Furha? I don't think it's Furja. Because Furja just doesn't come off the tongue right. It sounds like a curse word or like a part of the anatomy that we don't like to talk about or something. I'm almost sure it's Furha. But anyway, Retribution just does so much. It's kind of our best Angels payoff in the entire deck because it does multiple things having to do with Angels. It even makes an Angel as soon as it comes into play, which is pretty nice. And it's a 4-mana Sarah Angel, a pretty good rate in 2021. And then on subsequent chapters, it allows your Angels to remove other creatures, which is really good. I shouldn't have to tell you. But it also gives all your Angels double strike on the 3rd chapter, which ends a lot of games. Now, the next best reason to play Angels isn't even really an Angels payoff necessarily, but it's still pretty righteous. Valkyrie. This card is amazing, and I didn't even expect it to be in the deck. If you remember during preview season, I was often like, I don't even think that this card goes in the Angels deck. It's probably for the Clerics deck or the Mono White Life Cane deck or something. But no, it actually definitely goes in Angels. It is far superior to pretty much any other 3-drop option the deck has access to. Once it's in play, if it stays in play for even one turn, then on turn 4, you're definitely going to get a 4-drop Angel. There are many ways to do it in the deck, and pretty much all of them have 4 toughness, so you're going to be gaining 4 life, getting you really close to that 27 threshold. And we have plenty of ways in the deck to make multiple Angels all at the same time. Those pay off Righteous Valkyrie really, really well. You know, if you Amiria's Call and get 2 Angels, that's 8 life. So you've probably just created a couple of 6/6s if you do get to 27 life and you get the double Anthem effect. But mostly what Righteous Valkyrie does is it's a 2/4 flyer, meaning that it invalidates all the 3 or toughness or less removal in the format, of which there's a fair amount. And it stays around a lot more often than you'd think that it would. It blocks well in the early game, and especially against aggro decks that have a hard way of removing it. If we can untap with the thing in play and have even 1 Angel in our hand, that goes a really long way to making sure that we can stay in the game, get to the mid-game, use Orzhov's Retribution to blow away their small creatures, get double strike, and finish off the game, baby. But Righteous Valkyrie goes a long way towards bridging the gap to make sure we can get to turn 5, 6, 7 when we're able to do all that fun stuff. Also, remember that giving all your Angels +2/+2 with Righteous Valkyrie pays off Retribution in a number of ways, whether it be making your Angels bigger so they can kill bigger stuff on Chapter 2 of Retribution, or just giving your Angels the +2/+2 boost so they deal more damage with their double strike on Chapter 3 of Retribution. Cards work really, really well together, and it's awesome that they're on curve, so I just wanted to point those interactions out. But probably the other best Angels interaction is another card that I didn't even know was going to be in the deck when I first started building this thing. I was pretty sure the 5-drop slot was going to be Baneslayer Angel all day. I was excited that this deck was finally going to provide a vehicle for Baneslayer Angel to shine in Standard because it really hasn't seen any action since it was reprinted. Well, Baneslayer Angel ended up being relegated to the sideboard because the much better 5-drop in most situations is Rampage of the Valkyries, believe it or not. In testing, this card has been an absolute beast. It puts opponents in really weird blocking situations like this one right here, where a double block pretty much decimates the opponent's entire team. Of course, we have 2 Rampage in play during that clip, which is pretty awesome when that happens, but even if you only have the one Rampage in play, again, this leads your opponent into some really weird decisions, and sometimes it can take out creatures you otherwise wouldn't take out, like, you know, Seasoned Hallowblade or Dream Trawler and stuff like that. So just this has been a very important card. You know, note that with stuff like not only this, but Furha's Retribution and a couple of other cards that we'll talk about, I think this is a really important thing to bring up, is that this is the way we're getting card advantage in this deck. We don't have any ways of drawing cards or even really reanimating stuff out of the graveyard too much. Mostly how the deck is going to get card advantage is that it plays cards that are 2 or 3 for 1s. You know, with Rampage, we get a Serra Angel for 5 mana, which has always been the rate, but we also get a Serra Angel that kills the thing when it dies, which is cool, because if it blocks like a 4 toughness thing and dies, it's going to kill another creature along with the thing that it blocked. So just not too bad. And of course, this works with all your other angels on the table too. Again, ridiculous in multiples. So that's a way of getting kind of 2 for 1 value on a card. Same thing with Furha's Retribution, which gives us an angel and removal and double strike. You know, I've already brought up Amiria's Call. That's 2 angels on a card. And we'll get to another card later that basically creates all the angels we have mana for at any given time. So we have a lot of cards in this deck that don't generate card advantage in a very specific way, but what they do is they let us spend 1 card in order to get 2 or 3 effects or things on the battlefield. And that's an important thing to bring up when kind of talking about what this deck does. Another good example of this concept is Speaker of the Heavens, which I wasn't sure was going to be in the deck either, to be honest with you, and I'm still not sure that 4 copies is correct, although one thing I like about Speaker, ironically, is that it's kind of a magnet for removal. You know, if your opponent removes your Speaker of the Heavens, that's a removal spell they don't have for the Righteous Valkyrie or the 4-drop Angel. So that can sometimes be important, but there are other times where Speaker of the Heavens is going to come off the top in the relative late game and just be this token generating thing that basically creates 6/6s, because you got a Righteous Valkyrie out at the same time. Every time you tap it to create a 4/4, you're going to gain 4 life off of Valkyrie. They just work so well together. And of course, this works really well with Furha's Retribution, because you're just making a bunch of double strike angels. All that. You're making angels that double as removal and stuff. So there are going to be a lot of games where your opponent is just kind of freaked out by an early game Speaker of the Heavens, and so when they use their 1 eliminate on this, that's one they won't have for the Valkyrie, and that'll allow you to snowball into cooler plays. So even if Speaker gets removed, it sometimes did its job, but if it doesn't get removed, obviously that's even better 90% of the time. It's just another card that creates angels, and it's another card that basically creates 2 bodies in 1 card, you know? Like things like Amiria's Call is a non-creature spell that creates multiple creatures. This is a creature spell that creates multiple creatures. So another kind of example of the way in which the deck gets card advantage. And even though you can't count on Speaker to do it every game, the games where it does are amazing. But we've also got 4 copies of Starheim Unleashed in the deck, which is probably the most illustrative of the concept I'm trying to get across in this video as to like what this deck actually does and how it gets advantage on the board and stuff. You know, this is a card that is capable of creating 2 or 3 angels at the same time. In testing, there's been at least like 3, 4, you know, multiple occasions, more than 1% of the time. There's a play where you have Righteous Valkyrie on the table and you create like 3 angels in the late game with a Foretold Starheim Unleashed, and suddenly you gain 12 life. They're all 6/6s, and it's pretty unbelievable. But the card works in a lot of different ways too. You can play it, you can foretell it on turn 2 and get a turn 3 4/4 angel, and that's good if you've got like a turn 4 Furha's Retribution that you're looking to spin into. Kind of depends on what else is in your hand and how you're going to be using the next few turns as to how you ultimately use this card. But there's a lot of ways to do it. It's not bad for its 4 mana rate. It's really not bad for its 3 mana rate if you didn't have a 2-drop. You might as well foretell this. And then you might draw into a 3-drop you'd rather play, but you have it still in the bank for later in the game. Once you have 5 mana, you make 2 angels. 7 mana, you make 3 angels. Again, I think this is mostly good in this deck because we've got other ways of paying off having multiple angels on the table. I'm not sure how good Unleashed would be in other decks, but in this deck, it's really good for a lot of pretty obvious reasons. Now, I'm on 4 copies of Resplendent Marshal here, mostly to have a decent on-curve 3-drop, because, you know, a 3/3 flyer for 3 ain't too bad, but for the most part, if you do play it on curve, it's not going to do much when it enters the battlefield, unless you played a Speaker of the Heavens on turn 1, and that one got blown away by a shock, and then you played a Speaker of the Heavens on turn 2. This is a situation that comes up like, you know, a non-zero amount of the time, so it can work sometimes. But for the most part, if you play it on curve, not going to do much. But when it dies, suddenly it makes all your angels bigger. If you play it later on in the game, when you top deck it, suddenly it's not a bad top deck because it's just an instant anthem effect for everything except itself. And then you can send it into battle like pretty indiscriminately, because if it dies, it's going to give a huge bolster effect to your team. So I kind of like a lot about this card, but it's still awkward in some spots, you know. Like, most of it is just the 3-mana 3/3 rate and the creature type. You know, we need a critical mass of angels in the deck, but this isn't an embarrassing card by any stretch of the imagination. There's definitely far worse angels that we could play, but, you know, this is this far down on the playability scale for a reason. It's not necessarily one of the cards that I'm most excited about in the deck, and if you don't have the money for it or the mythic wild cards for it, there's a couple of things you could replace it with, which we'll get to a little bit later. But long story short, Resplendent Marshal hasn't been the most impressive card in the deck, but when it's good, it's pretty good. So is Legion Angel. This is another thing that I think tells the story of what this deck is doing in terms of card advantage. You know, it's a creature that spins into another creature and another creature and another creature. You know, it's like ants or roaches. You see one Legion Angel, you're gonna have to deal with a whole legion of them, right? So this isn't necessarily card advantage, but it sure feels like it draws a card when it enters the battlefield. So we'll play a copy of this. Yet another good way of getting back on the table after sweepers or meeting 1-for-1 removal really, really well. Legion Angel has been a powerful card, to say the least. But so has Youthful Valkyrie. I really didn't expect much from this card. I figured it'd be a 2-mana 1/3 or 2/4 most of the time, but even as a 2-mana 2/4, it's really not bad, you know? This thing becomes immune to Heartless Act relatively quickly, and if your opponent does decide when you play your 3 or 4 drop Angel that they're going to cast an instant speed Heartless Act on your you know, Youthful Valkyrie, that's actually fine, because that's a Heartless Act they didn't use on the 3 or 4 drop Angel you're casting. So it kind of works out for you either way, you know. And Valkyrie usually gets to a 3/5 or a 4/6 fairly easily in a game. Goes really well with Starheim Unleashed and Amiria's Call. Again, you know, cards that create multiple angels. Goes really well with stuff like, you know, Furha's Retribution. If you go turn 2 Youthful Valkyrie, turn 3 Angel, turn 4 Retribution, then your Youthful Valkyrie is getting really big, and that means it's going to be able to tap to kill a thing pretty easily. So I really like a lot about this card that I didn't think I was going to like, you know. I figured, oh, we'll just play this because it's a 2-drop Angel and we're kind of forced to, but no, I'm actually happy to see this in my opening hand. Now, just to polish off the main deck here, we played a little bit of removal. Why not? We're playing 4 copies of Heartless Act and a copy of Eliminate. Now, you could switch this up if you wanted to, you know, 3 Heartless Act, 2 Eliminate, whatever. I just wanted to, you know, some number, at least 5, 2-mana removal spells. You could even play Glass Casket in this slot if you wanted to, but I think these are slightly safer than Casket. That said, if you're having problems with, like, Seasoned Hallowblade, Casket might be the right call, so keep that in mind. But I just wanted some removal. We're playing black in the deck. We might as well play spot removal. Plus, we don't have a whole lot to do in the early game anyway, so I figured either this or Maze Mind Tome, and I would rather be able to interact with my opponent's board. Then, of course, 4 Amiria's Call to not only finish off the main deck, but deftly segue into the lands. I'm really good at my job, but Amiria's Call is just kind of, it's pretty obvious, right? Yeah. Why not play this card? You know, I've brought it up a million times already in this video, so then you knew that you were playing it, but hey, we're like the only tribal deck that gets a whole untapped NDFC. Now, here are your lands, 22 in all, but of course there's 26 with Amiria's Call in the base, so keep that in mind. But you might be wondering, first and foremost, why I didn't play Great Hall of Starheim. It makes angels, Dev. Yeah, well, I played probably 40 plus games at least in testing with this deck, and I only popped Great Hall of Starheim 1 time in all of those games, and I didn't like sacrificing the Resplendent Marshal, although there were some good things about doing that. But still, most of the time you don't want to sacrifice a creature because most of our creatures are like really important. And if you sacrifice, you know, a 4/4 angel to get a 4/4 angel, what have you really accomplished? So Great Hall of Starheim is out. We need all of our lands to be untapped as much as possible. But on that same, you know, tip, I didn't really play Temple of Silence in the deck. Instead, I opted to play Triomes that tap for black and white. That way, if we get these in the late game and we already have enough mana for Amiria's Call, or we just need to draw a different card We have 5 mana. We need to draw a Heartless Act. Cycle these away. Try to draw the Heartless Act. It works a lot better than scrying, especially in a format with rogues and other mill strategies. So, in the end, I felt like the Triomes were just, in some ways, like way better cards than Temples. But let's look at the sideboard. We already know there's going to be 3 copies of Legion Angel in there, so let's just... There it is. But aside from that, there's also 3 copies of Duress. We've got to do something against control decks. We do have to have ways of taking big plays away from our opponent. We are horrible against Tanugan the Spirit Dragon. It's one of the cards we fear the most. Duress is good against both sweepers and Ugins, plus a bunch of other wacky nonsense people are trying here at the beginning of the season. So Duress is just an all-powerful card. We'll take out some of the removal spells, put those in against control. There's also 1 copy of Extinction Event. I haven't actually boarded this in too much, to be honest with you, because we do pretty well against aggro, especially post-sideboard. But if there's any deck that's looking to go specifically really, really wide on you, Extinction Event's a good call. I like a little bit more than Doomscar and stuff, because we can actually keep some of our guys out. Baneslayer Angel will come in. We got a lot of 5 drops, in case you didn't notice, in the board here. That's because there are barely any, or 0, barely any 5 drops in the deck. It's just Rampage of the Valkyries. And some of those can come out. Those are definitely flexible slots. I don't think you need to have more than 2 copies of Rampage in a lot of matchups. Now, against aggro decks, we'll bring in Baneslayer Angel, obviously notoriously very good against aggro, so she'll get her chance to shine against mono red and mono white and stuff. But we've also got Cleaving Reaper, interesting 5-drop. This is against control and rogues, because we can bring her back from the graveyard. Very important to be able to have a recursive creature against control decks. So again, we'll take out a couple of copies of Rampage, throw in a couple of copies of Reaper. But against those Ugin decks that we hate so much, we've got Elspeth Conquers Death in there, which is also good for bringing back a big angel some of the time. You can bring back a Righteous Valkyrie, which can sometimes be an important way of getting something going in the late game when you need to get to 27, or you just need to gain some life to stay in the game against an aggro deck. Elspeth is good, but it's mostly in there against Ugin decks because we hate that stupid card. But we've also got a couple of copies of Heliod's Intervention. Does some cool stuff for us. It kills Great Hinges, kills Embercleaves, and every artifact and enchantment in between, like Feladar's Retreat or whatever you're having trouble taking out. But, if you needed to do this, depending on where you are in that game, in game 2 or 3, you can always just use it to gain a bunch of life and get to 27. Now, there were some cards I didn't play in this deck that you might have some questions about, and there are more cards than this you might have questions about, but I think the ones I'm probably going to get the most comments about are Stalwart Valkyrie, Vengeful Reaper, Eradicator Valkyrie, and Furha Judge of Valor. Now, Furha is just way too expensive for what she does. Once we do play Furha, we're almost never going to play a second spell in a turn because we're very likely going to be in top deck mode, or all of our spells are very expensive. So I just really don't like the idea of Furha in this deck. That answers that question. Eradicator Valkyrie, probably the best of these 4 cards to consider, but I'm still not a huge fan. If we're going to play a bunch of 4-drops, I like things like Furha's Retribution and Starheim Unleashed a lot better than this card, but I could see fitting 1 copy. Problem is, like I've already said, you don't really want to be sacrificing your creatures in this deck too often, so I'm just not a huge fan of Eradicator. Now, Stalwart Valkyrie and Vengeful Reaper, I just don't think these are very powerful cards. Stalwart Valkyrie looks okay, but you're pretty much never going to play it in turn 2 unless your opponent's shocked your Speaker of the Heavens on turn 1. Again, that'll happen some of the time, but I don't think that's worth it to play Stalwart Valkyrie, because if you're playing it for 4 mana, it's bad. Even if you're playing it for 2 mana on turn 4, it's usually bad. And finally, Vengeful Reaper is probably what I would play if I didn't have the wild cards to play Resplendent Marshal. And honestly, I wish I could trade the wild cards back for Resplendent Marshal. That's why I need those mythic wild cards back. But anyway, honestly, Vengeful Reaper is not necessarily the most powerful card in the world, obviously, but it slots in fairly well. It's kind of a 3-drop angel, because you can foretell it on 2, play the angel on 3, so you could put it in place of a 3-drop like Resplendent Marshal, and it might do some cool stuff for you. Death Touch on a flyer is always a decent thing to have, so I'm not completely adverse to this card, but I think Marshal is just the better 3-drop. But all in all, I think we got the right list here, but if for budget purposes you need to include a Vengeful Reaper, I'm interested in how that card works out. And here are your power rankings, ladies and gentlemen. It feels like it's been a while since I said that. Feels good to say it. Final score, Nintendo 60... I was going to say Nintendo 64. Just out of force of habit. It's actually 65. It's 1 better than a Nintendo 64. not bad. It's a respectable one, but I still kind of wish this deck was a little bit better than it ended up, and I've tested the crap out of it, and it's taken like 3 different forms at this point. It was a little bit more aggro to begin with, then I settled into the mid-range nature of the deck with Righteous Valkyrie just a few games in, and that's kind of where we've coasted. I have made some changes to the deck along the way, especially the sideboard, which I did a lot of work trying to hammer out, but ultimately I'm not sure the pinnacle of this deck is going to be anywhere near as powerful as some of the strategies we have access to in Standard right now. Not every set can be Throne of Eldraine, and not every card can be the Great Henge. That said, I bring up Eldraine, which is mostly Great Henge and Embercleave, but we're actually pretty good against Mono Green Food and Gruul Aggro. I've won a lot of my matches against those decks. Instead, it's the Yorion decks and the Ugin decks especially that we are not very good against, because we don't close quite quickly enough to keep our opponent from casting an Ugin in time, and that can be a problem, but we have kind of a 50-50 matchup against decks like Rogues, and I know everybody hates Rogues, so it kind of depends on who goes first and how much removal and Drown in the Lock and counter magic your opponent has access to, but if you can go ahead and get on the board, all of your creatures fly, and they're all bigger than the creatures Rogues play, so there's been a lot of games where you just like pummel Rogue's stupid face in so long as they don't get a good mill plan on the board or something. So Rogues feels 50-50. Yorion's a tough matchup. Ugin is a devastating matchup. And we're actually really good against pretty much any aggro deck in the format right now. I wonder if I can use Sephiroth's music for the Patreon shout out or something. I guess I'll try it. Maybe I'll get DMCA'd. I'm not actually sure. But either way, that's the end of the first deck tech of the season, everybody. Hope you liked it, and I hope you get a chance to try this thing out, whether it's Arena or you proxy it up or you just order it in paper, which you can do by clicking the first link in the description. As usual, that'll take you to TCG Player. They're good dudes. That's where you get the deck for the cheapest. So if you're excited to play some Angels, whether you want to do it casually or you want to do it on a competitive level, because I do think the deck has some legs, and if your F&M isn't like super competitive, maybe squeak some wins in, so I do like the way the deck turned out, and I especially think after rotation the deck is going to be able to do some really cool things, but we won't see that until like October. So but at the same time, I was pretty impressed with the way the deck came out, so I hope you get a chance to give the thing a shot. Aside from that, like, subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. We've still got quite the journey to go on in Kaldheim Standard, so if you want to go on it with us, the Viking ship has not departed the shore yet. You can jump on ahead. Should jump on. That's what I'm looking for. And hit the sub way button down there. It won't give you free sandwiches, but it will subscribe you to the channel. You hit the bell for the notifications. Aside from that, check out the Patreon. Like I said, the patrons voted on the first deck of the season. It was Orzhov Angels. But we're going to do, 10 or 12 other decks this season, and we're going to vote on every single one of them. So hit the link in the description or go to patreon.com/SBMTG. Pledge $1 a month, and you can vote on decks too. Don't you want to be part of the Strictly Squad? I think that's what we're calling it now. We came to that on Twitch, by the way. That's how we came to the Strictly Squad, I guess being the official name for the peeps. So if you want, you can be part of that squad on Twitch too. Just go to twitch.tv/SBMTGdev or hit the link in the description to follow me there. We stream 2-3 times a week, and I'm going to be doing a lot of streaming just here soon because Kaldheim just came out. I just did a stream like last night that was a lot of fun. But I'll probably be playing this on stream before too long, a day or two, so make sure you follow me there. We have a lot of fun on Twitch. It's like the most fun you'll ever have in your life. I promise. Do it. Follow me. But anyway, I guess aside from that, I'm pretty much done. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hit me up with any questions or takes down there in the comments section, or cards you'd play that I didn't play. If there's any really spicy tech, hit me with it down there in the comments. But aside from that, I guess I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from the place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind. Sephiroth!